Mr. Bogosian, welcome back. Good
Thanks,
to see you again,
thanks.
sir.
Good to be here. Thanks.
Mr. Lindsay.
I had been noticing a lot of prominent public intellectuals, thinkers I respected, getting accused of things like sexism and racism for reasons that didn't stack up.
My background is in mathematics. I bailed out on academia in 2010, though, because I kind of see the writing on the wall. And so now I am a renegade gender scholar, and I write nonsense about genitals.
So every time I engaged, if I found somebody who would discuss it with me, I was told that racism and sexism are systems. And I'd get referred to technical definitions that appeared in the academic literature and what I assumed at the time was sociology. This eventually got me looking into gender studies.
There's many fields of studies that you can get legitimate degrees in that are absolutely preposterous.
Right.
We started writing a bunch of academic papers for the journals that represent these fields. Academics work their careers to write one or two of these a year.
Yeah.
And so they're really hard to write. They're supposed to be hard to get published. So we wrote 20 of them in 10 months.
As these accusations kept piling up, I got more and more curious about them. Eventually, I gave in, and I decided to carefully read one specific paper that kept coming across my path. It was about something called feminist glaciology.
So we had an article, the one that got the most press was about dog humping in Portland, Oregon.
Why is it retracted?
Because it's
Because they realized that
We
you guys
claim
were
to have closely examined the genitals of
just under 10,000
just
dogs.
under 10,000 dogs, and then interrogated their owners as to their sexual orientation.
Quote, "There is even less from a feminist perspective that focuses on gender, understood here not as a male-female binary, but as a range of personal and social possibilities, and also on power, justice, inequality, and knowledge production in the context of ice, glacier change, and glaciology." End quote.
We wanted to get to was a conclusion, and then we made up all the crap in between
Yeah.
to get to it. And the conclusion was feminism should train men the way we train dogs so that we can get rid of rape culture.
The reviewers are worried that we didn't respect the dog's privacy. That's the concern. We respected the genitals.
And this paper didn't just get published. The journal said that this was exemplary scholarship and gave it an award.
Quote, "Feminist theories and critical epistemologies, especially feminist political ecology and feminist post-colonial studies, open up new perspectives and analyses of the history of glaciological knowledge."
To Hypatia, we published got accepted, not published, but that one we claim that it's unacceptable.
It's unethical to make fun of anything to do with social justice. That's a problem. So
Right.
we said that, South Park's a huge problem.
There is no shame in my safe space. My safe space.
We went into talking about how Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart have the right idea, but then the journal was like, but they're straight white males, so you have to, nuance around that.
So they published that.
They published that.
They published that.
What was that? What was that one called?
That one was called When the Joke's on You.
Yeah.
Quote, "Scottish visual artist Katie Patterson chronicled the ordinary sounds of 3 glaciers in Iceland, and then transferred the audio tracks to LP microgroove vinyl ice records. Records created by casting and freezing the glacier's own meltwater. She then played the frozen records simultaneously on 3 turntables as they melted. The audio recordings, available at www.katiepatterson.org/ice-records, fuse glacier sounds with the high whine of the ice record itself. After 10 minutes, the actual ice LP record deteriorates and the sound melts away."
Literally took Mein Kampf, the actual words from Mein Kampf,
Yeah.
and put it in this paper.
We took the whole document online and we just searched the word Jew. And we just started picking sentences and paragraphs. So what was it? That at the end it was something like, if we don't combat whiteness, it's going to be the funeral wreath for mankind. That's straight out of Mein Kampf. Now they didn't accept that paper though, because that paper turns out was written from the perspective of a white lesbian who hated her own whiteness, and they said that it was positioning her as a good white. She should have really been forwarding the ideas of the black scholars that she read way more and not talking about herself so much, even though it was a paper designed to be talking about herself.
Yeah, because that was what Hitler did, so that's what we had to do.
Yeah.
In the last episode of Skeptic Explains, I asked for you to write questions for me to answer in the comments section, and one of the examples that I gave was, what is postmodernism? Now I realize this isn't fair, and it wasn't exactly the most popular question that I got, but lots of you did ask that exact question. So, what is postmodernism? Is postmodernism bad? Yep. Okay, sort of. Not exactly.
They've actually tapped into this, to throw around the term, this postmodern notion that everything in society has to do with power dynamics.
Postmodernism was a movement that was born as a response to modernism. Modernism was a movement that was born as a response to the way that industrialization had... this could go on for days.
And the power dynamics have to be understood in terms of groups, and how those groups have traditionally held power and exercised power.
What is wrong with postmodernism? Scientific method, logic, reason, deduction. Well, some in the movement flat out reject those concepts.
The postmodern philosophers like Foucault and all of this got all hooked up on power because they were dissatisfied with seeing what they called grand narratives.
Postmodernists replace facts and proofs with narratives. Evidence either proves or disproves a narrative.
They saw all these huge, explanations for how the world works and said, they're not working.
Outside of a group of people who have taken, say, gender studies, these things don't make much sense. I'm not even joking. It's two different languages.
Look how bad communism failed. Look how there's so much, bullshit coming out of this or that from religion.
If you've ever been in an argument with a social justice warrior, for example, you may feel like no matter how well you make your points, they just don't seem to get it. Well, likely they're feeling the same way about you.
It's not working. We need to just get rid of all of it. We're going to deconstruct this. We're going to break it down to its power dynamics.
Often these concepts make their way from an academic platform and completely unfiltered end up somehow on some shit news site that uses them as clickbait.
And then it took this huge turn in the 1990s and got really vicious, and that's where it really got, that's when it turned intersectional, actually.
At the university level, this means the humanities, social sciences, they seem to be following a trend of rejecting the old world logic and substituting it with their understanding of their subjects through a postmodernist lens.
And politics or media or the tech sector now, whatever it happens to be.
Without empiricism, they develop their own version of truth through their own version of reason, rejecting ideas like universal truths and absolutes.
This stifling of creativity is the most disturbing part about it. Like the agreement that South Park and The Simpsons are a real problem. It's so bizarre.
There was always an ongoing joke in academia that the social sciences are mostly nonsense. Today, that divide is exacerbated by the new language postmodernists use, or their shop talk, if you will.
Yeah, theory, that's what they call it.
I love that word.
Yeah, theory.
I love when feminist theory. I love when they throw that around.
I think the effect is pretty clear. It allows people to take a very radical stance, more radical than thou, but to be completely dissociated from anything that's happening for many reasons. One reason is nobody can understand a word they're saying, so they're already dissociated. It's kind of like a private lingo.
But you're saying things that, once you say that, you're good. Like you can say something ridiculous and then say feminist theory, and they're like, "Oh, it's in feminist theory."
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is so much of the stuff they come up with. Let me throw them an olive branch. Like so much of the stuff they come up with is a creative idea. Maybe there's something to some of this stuff, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But what they're putting forward is hypotheses. And then they're treating them as conclusions.
Concepts like privilege, patriarchy, cultural appropriation, toxic masculinity, rape culture, everything being a social construct.
Why don't they test it? Well, if they tested it, and I'm not making this shit up, you won't believe me, but this is true. If they tested it and the test showed that their hypothesis was wrong, they would say that the test was racist. Right. That the test is condoning racism, and that's why it didn't give them the desired result.
These are all postmodernist ideas that can only be properly explained or properly explored or proven through the lens of postmodernism.
They send the paper off. The reviewers, in our cases, made our papers crazier every single time. So they push it further into the ideology or the madness.
How does a reviewer do something like that? What input do they get to have?
They said, for example, that we should problematize allyship.
An ally is a person that wants to fight for the equality of a marginalized group that they're not a part of.
If we want our paper published, we've got to problematize allyship.
I love that word, problematize.
Everything problematize everything.
I don't know why it took me so long to realize how problematic the term ally is.
Dog parks problematize everything. Problematize literally anything can be problematized and looked at through a feminist lens.
It's such
they
a great
problematize
word.
everything.
So you gotta know when to zippa the lippa. This isn't Mario Kart. Stay in your lane.
So just sit there and shut up. Give us your money. Give us your support. Listen to everything we say. Question nothing. Then go repeat it to your people.
Everything. The whole world's a fucking
that's their
problem.
Tool. That's why we called it grievance studies. The whole world's a problem.